Go live to Economics Managing Director at EQ, Warren Hogan. Warren, great to talk to you. I would say, congratulations, you told them so. That perhaps we are getting into this higher interest rate cycle now. The rate cutting cycle certainly seems like it's over. The question I want to ask you first up is that in hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight, was it maybe one cut too many from the RBA?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. That's nice of you to say. I have been sounding like a broken record for a while now, and it does look like my concerns are playing out. I don't think it's a case of one rate cut too many or whether or not there were rate cuts being appropriate around an election and all of those issues. The actual problem was the narrow path strategy. That is that they didn't raise rates enough to get the inflation under control. That's what's been confirmed with the economic data of the last 3 months. We not only never got inflation to their target, and this is 4 years down the track, but now it's rising again. So, of course, the rate cuts look sort of, not the right thing in hindsight. But actually, it was the explicit strategy endorsed by the Treasury and the government to do this open experiment because no other central bank did it. Everyone else took their cash rates above 5%, the US, Canada, New Zealand, the UK. And in the past, that's exactly what the RBA would have done. It would have been a sharper downturn, but we'd be now in recovery and wouldn't have this inflation. So I think that's the issue. In terms of where to from here now, I think it's, the governor's a cautious communicator. What we saw yesterday was as clear a signal as you're going to get that they need to basically reverse the rate cuts from this year. So all 75 basis points, all 3 rate cuts. And the question then becomes is if 4.35% didn't get the job done on inflation in 2024, why would it do it in 2026? And the question becomes, does it have to go higher? Now, I don't know. I'm hoping not. But they need to get on with it. They probably should have raised rates yesterday. But anyway, we're probably going to get
They
one.
didn't even talk about it. They didn't even talk about raising rates, according to Michelle Bullock. But can I just go back to this narrow path? So are you saying, the remit changed for the RBA, this government changed it, they needed to consider jobs. So has that meant that the RBA has had one hand tied behind its back? And do you think that's the problem?
No, look, I think the changes that the government's done with the new board and the new approach, the mandate hasn't changed that much, really. I mean, they've always tried to get the balance right, but so I'm not sure that's those changes. I think the new setup isn't working well because the RBA can no longer be forward-looking. They're now very reactive, which is not good. But I don't think it's the government's setup about targeting unemployment, unless, of course, that this narrow strategy was dictated to them by the government, which I don't think it was. I think it was all the thinkers, the Stephen Kennedys at Treasury.
That would be quite a scandal if it was dictated, right? And it's meant to be an independent body.
Well, in terms of the broad objectives. But look, I think it was actually this noble desire, this really good reason to try and do something that would reduce the disruption to the economy. But the problem with it is it's not realistic. And we know that inflation is their priority. That's what they've got to do. And the governor herself has said it many times, and she said it yesterday. The only way we can keep unemployment low over the longer term is to ensure we have price stability. That is, inflation is running at around 2%. So I think it's just the strategy that we've got to learn from. It was a great cause and a great idea, but it doesn't look like it's worked. And let's just hope we don't pay a high cost in terms of having to raise rates a lot and put the economy into recession next year. But that risk is now a lot more prominent than it should be. And so that's what we're going to be dealing with next year.
I mean, the December inflation read, given Christmas spending, is going to be an interesting one. January, even more so, when the rebates for electricity no longer exist. You'd have to think in February the RBA would be considering a hike.
Yeah, look, I think they just need to do at least one or two with the information they have now. But there's some really good news here. One, businesses are investing. We're fitting out data centers. We're getting ready for the new economy. The new economy the whole world is facing into. The consumer is coming back. How strongly it remains to be seen. As you said, now is a critical time for consumer spending. The government's slowing its spending. Admittedly, it's mainly investment, which isn't great, but there is signs of a slowdown in recurrent spending. That's got to continue, and I'm sure next week the Treasurer is going to say all the right things about their cutting back and all this sort of stuff. There's a lot of good news here. It's just the one missing piece is we never got on top of inflation. And of course, yes, that probably means a rate hike in February, and probably another one soon after. Beyond that, maybe the government does pull the reins in a bit. Maybe the consumer isn't as robust because, yes, they're having to pay more for their electricity. There's a lot of potential outcomes, but the RBA's got to start making sure they deal with the main risk that they're there to do, and that's to keep inflation down. It's now entering its fifth year of having inflation above target, and that's unacceptable to
What's
Australia.
going on in the US then? I mean, because the US Treasury is about to cut rates. That'll happen really early, our time tomorrow, I think. But Warren, they've got inflation issues as well. How can they possibly cut in that environment?
Yeah, well, the big problem they've got is that the government shutdown. They don't really actually have a great feel for what's happening in the economy because they haven't had any data. But putting that to the side, I'd say the meeting for the Fed this week is exactly the same as the February meeting this year. There's a lot of politics, and to appease the political class, a rate cut is the lesser of two evils, is my framing of it, and that's what we saw in this country in February. The fact is the US economy is actually doing pretty well and it's getting through the tariffs. The US consumer seems to be holding up pretty well, although their sentiment's terrible. It's unclear, but the US interest rates is higher than ours and has been a lot higher than ours. So even if they cut tomorrow, they're still above us.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Warren, always good to talk to you. Must feel pretty good to feel a little bit vindicated this morning.
Thanks, Laura. Nice of you.
See you, Warren.